let's move on,
Do
boys.
it.
And let's move on to our college football week 5 recap. It goes back to Ethan. So who is your week 5 team of the week in college football?
Dylan, you're going to like this one, but I think Michigan finally put a complete game together. They looked like the best team in the country. They probably should be ranked number 1 after that. I get Georgia's won back-to-back titles. They're still undefeated. So, like, yeah, whatever. Like, I get it. Keep them at 1. But if we go based off one game, they are without a doubt, that was the most complete game we've seen any team in the country play this year.
Yep. And I think another thing, too, is that I think if there is a team that is affected by the new clock rules of Michigan or of college football, I think it is Michigan, just by the style they play. And that's why the scores haven't been those like 50-7 type of situations because that clock keeps running. Michigan likes to run the ball. They've been consistent. Blake Corum's averaging, I believe, about 6 yards a carry. They've been efficient on offense. Just JJ distributing the ball outside of that Bowling Green game where he had 3 interceptions. He's been really, really good. And they peaking at the right time. That offensive line has seemed to have they've found their first 5. I think another reason why there was some struggles early on is because they were rotating a lot of guys, trying to find the best 5 on the field. I think they've settled on that now.
Now,
and
Dylan,
you're seeing that continuity grow and develop.
You mentioned the big boys. Is it 5 seniors up front for Michigan?
Ooh, I don't know the years, but
Okay.
it's a very experienced.
Yeah.
Very experienced. It's been 2. They've got 3 I think at least 3 guys for sure that have been on the starting line for the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets hairy because of COVID as well. I think they have a couple of transfers as well that's been in their rotation, but I think they've settled on their top 6, and that's who they're going to be rolling with. Is knock on wood, as long as they can all stay healthy. But I did not get to watch this game because we had a game ourselves that we were in at the same time, but checking my phone after our game got over, it was very pleasant to see that Michigan was up 35 or 28-0 at halftime and able to come out with a win. So, yes, that is a great choice. I don't know if that's a troll pick because they are playing the Gophers this week.
I'll be watching the Twins.
You're playing mind games with me.
No, I think Ethan took the goggles off and said, "This football team's pretty damn good."
Yeah. I mean, 100%, it's fine. We're going to be watching. We're focused on the Twins. It's Twins season.
Hey, it's dipping below 60 degrees now. Ethan's mind is on soup and playoff baseball.
In the Twins will be playing later at night because I think Rangers and Orioles play at 1 o'clock.
I can confirm that.
Okay.
I saw that on the TV.
Do you want to go to Target Field and they're having a live free event watching the game at Target Field? I'm just saying.
Let's stay in touch.
I think it's not a terrible idea.
Let's stay in touch.
So, Grant, who is your Week 5 college football team of the week?
So I'm glad Ethan mentioned that he thinks Michigan should be the number 1 team in the country. My team, I think, should be number 2, and that would be the Texas Longhorns.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
They look like they're finally a real team. Their offensive line is dominant. They're running the ball. They're being physical. Quinn Ewers is playing like a 5-star recruit. He's not turning the ball over. He's making plays with his legs. I mean, on Saturday, Quinn was 25 of 35, 322 yards, 3 total touchdowns, 2 on the ground, 1 in the air. And they averaged 6.6 yards per carry, boys. They had 336 yards on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Against a ranked Kansas team. I understand, is it McDaniels was out?
Yeah, the quarterback.
Yeah, the quarterback was out, but he can't stop the run. We're going to use the Travis Hunter take here for Kansas. He wasn't going to change the aspect of that game at all. And the one part about Texas that I think you really have to like, you kind of take it back to the Jordan Shipley, Colt McCoy days. They might have the best receiver duo in the country with Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell. And then you throw in that tight end, Sanders. They have the athletes on the edge, and their offense is clicking. Their defense is playing well, so far this year. And, like Ethan said, Michigan may have had the most complete game. Texas, I think, has the best win on the road at Alabama, beating them assholes by 20.
Yep.
And they're getting ready to play Oklahoma this weekend. We'll find out if Oklahoma is a real team or not. And remember this summer when Urban Meyer said Texas had the best roster in college football and people thought he was crazy?
He's not wrong.
Maybe he's not wrong.
No.
I don't think he's wrong. And I really think I really like this Texas team. And if you ask me, if I was an AP voter, Michigan 1, Texas 2, Georgia 3. And this Georgia team so far, guys, is reminding me of that 2015 Ohio State team. You hear how dominant they're supposed to be. They're going to smash people. It's hard to get these kids motivated. They're still undefeated. We'll see if someone gets them. But as of right now, I think there are some questions with Georgia to be answered because so far this year, I saw this on Joel Klatt's page, they're 67th nationally in yards allowed per rush. Like that Georgia defense.
Yep.
And when you get to an SEC title game, if you have to play a team like Oregon in a college football semifinal or Michigan or Texas in the title game, you're giving up 4 yards a carry, you're going to lose that football game. But enough about Georgia. Texas, they got their fight back, and they're my team of the week.
I would like to see a rematch of that game in the Big 12 championship. Not that like McDaniels, obviously, like you said, doesn't play defense, but that defense in the first half actually wasn't bad. They held them to some field goals. They forced them to not get touchdowns, obviously, but the offense just couldn't do anything outside of like that long run where he fumbled. They picked it up, took it in for the touchdown. It'd be interesting. It would be interesting.
And I agree, Ethan. And I remember looking at the box score, and Kansas, they had over I think 120 yards on the ground, 3 carries of 20 plus. But with McDaniels in there, who knows? Maybe they can go off that little more zone read. So we'll see. We'll see. And and Lance Leopold, he's a good coach. This Kansas team's going to get better as the year goes on too. But for this week, I'm sticking with Texas.
And the other part too is this is typically a game, with Oklahoma coming up this week. This is a game where you would see Texas in the past where they would come out flat, they would look, like lethargic. But when you build your team from in the trenches and then on the outside, you're going to be able to be able to put teams away, which they've done the last 2 weeks in both Baylor and Kansas.
Well, and even you go back to Wyoming, they started off slow, but eventually those 3.5 to 4 yard carries you have against Wyoming, you're going to blow their doors off in the fourth quarter and put up 21 points. So Sark's building this thing the right way where, it might not be a big lead early, but they're bigger than you, they're faster, and they're stronger, and they're just going to lean, and eventually you're going to fold like that Instagram chat Ethan sent us about the Vikings defensive line where they're all on their back.
That's right. And I'm glad, Grant, you picked Texas because for mine, I had a couple written down. I had Baylor, coming back from 35-7 in the third quarter. Notre Dame because that was my game of the week last week, which was a tremendous game. They also got me a cover. But I'm going to go with your week 5 game of the week. I'm going to go with Ole Miss as my team of the week. They had a tough loss at Alabama where Lane Kiffin seat was looking like it was going to be a little bit warm. They had the mighty LSU Tigers rolling in. Brian Kelly, the favorites to come out of the SEC West right now. And, Ole Miss came out with their hair on fire, jumping out to a big lead. And then they lost it. And in the past, that is typically what you've seen a lot with Lane Kiffin teams where they get out to a big lead and then they let a team back into it and then it eventually ends up crumbling. They end up losing it. But they were down 2 possessions late in the fourth quarter. Score, and then they get the ball back. They go down and score again. And this knocks LSU out of the playoff race with 2 losses. They can still win the SEC West, but it's uphill sledding because they also have to go. They still have to play Texas A&M. They still have to play Alabama, and I don't know who they have to play out of the East.
I will say they still got to play Florida because that's their cross division rivalry every year. But if you have to go to Auburn this year and play in Jordan-Hare, that's not going to be an easy game.
Nope.
No, Georgia just found that out.
Georgia just found that
They
out.
did.
And Hugh Freeze, you can kind of question how good of a person he is, but he gets kids to buy in, and he's won a lot of games, been successful. There's a reason why he was brought to Auburn. You're absolutely right, Grant. It's not going to be an easy game.
Mm-hmm.
But Ole Miss to, be up and then down and then find a way to come back and win, that's an incredible win for Lane Kiffin and his staff. And now
and Dylan,
there's a lot of LSU fans that are not high on Brian Kelly, but this is who Brian Kelly is. There's nothing that's changed from him at Notre Dame to LSU. And this might be like the perfect marriage of like Brian Kelly and LSU, where they both think they're a lot better than what they actually are. They're both Brian Kelly's a good coach, LSU is a good program, but they can never quite get over the hump. LSU had the 1 year where they had Joe Burrow, probably one of the greatest rosters in college football, and they bring in a tremendous offensive mind in Joe Brady, who came from the Saints, to get them over the hump. And then after that, they've just fallen off. They've lost a head coach, and they've they fired Ed Orgeron, and now they bring in Brian Kelly, and it's just going to be that same LSU team. They're gonna win the games they're supposed to. There's going to be a couple of tight, close matches that on paper they're probably a little bit more talented, but they're always going to end up losing on the road.
They're exactly like Tennessee. Just opposite divisions in that conference. With the talent they have, you should easily win 9 games a year, but those 2 to 3 losses are going to separate you from the big boys in the room. And come Thanksgiving time,
I was going to say, Grant, I would say a better analogy, because Tennessee has fallen. You could probably make that argument Tennessee in the 90s.
Fair.
But I would say in a more recent, I would say the Georgia Bulldogs under Mark Richt.
I like it.
Uh-huh.
But to piggyback on your point, Dylan, with that Ole Miss game, at one point I think LSU was up 5. Was a 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 7. Jaden McDaniels hard count. They get an offsides. He sees it. He's going to pull the Aaron Rodgers. I'm taking a deep shot. Throws it to Brian Thomas Jr. in the end zone. They call it a touchdown on the field. They review it. He's got 1 foot in bounds with possession, but as he's falling, he loses grip of the ball and then gains possession again. Probably should have been ruled an incomplete pass. Call on the field stands. Ole Miss is down by 12. Fans are throwing beer cans on the field, water bottle, hot dogs, anything and everything. It could have blown up in Ole Miss's face after a bad call, but they calmed down, they got their emotions together, and they got a big win. And like you said, Dylan, years past, something they don't do. They let that missed call derail them, and they probably lose that game by 20 points instead of 12.